Hey everybody, it's Aaron Scott here. So this is a part two to the natal axis shift that occurred already. So I did a video about a week ago on the nodal axis shift from the Capricorn Cancer axis to the Gemini-Sag axis. As of this morning at about 4 a.m. Eastern Time US, it's official. It's official, everybody. Gosh, I already talked about this, but I specified in my first video where I talked about the general energetic of this blueprint. Because what's happened with this axis shift is that it's created a blueprint signature for the next 18-month cycle, right? And in that video, I specified that there would be a part two because, number one, there are fascinating things here. And number two, I wanted to look at the symbology. And number three, in this particular chart, I ended up pulling up a couple more asteroids, which I want to talk about. In this chart, number one, let's take a look at it. We're looking, number one, at the archetypal chart. So 0 degrees, Aries, starting point. So this is a global chart. This is for us all to look at and see. It's the archetypal storyline that we're looking at. This is the correct positioning of everything at the point of the nodal shift. Okay, number one. Number two, for all of you born, or all of you located, I should say, for all of you located on the Eastern time zone, US, and by the way, this of course includes Washington, D.C. This includes the US government. Okay, so this particular blueprint signature is tied to Eastern US time frame. Okay, and when we pull the chart, look at what we're looking at here, everybody. A 29-degree ascendant, 29-degree descendant, a 29-degree MC, and a 29-degree IC. The North Node is totally on top of the IC point. The South Node is completely on top of the MC point. In addition, we have a part of fortune, which is a calculated point. This is not a planet, it's not an asteroid. This is a mathematically computated point, taking the moon's position, the sun's position, and the ascendant's position. And look at what we have here, a 2911 part of fortune. In addition, what else did we have here? Was there something else? No, that was it. No, and we have karma here. We have karma. I'm just now seeing this actually. Look at what we have, everybody. The 29-degree axis, the blueprint configuration, Eastern US, including Washington, D.C., we have a 29-degree angular point, which, by the way, in this archetypal chart is creating a 29-degree point of hit or creation for each of the house signatures. In other words, look down here and you're going to see 29s across the board. What this indicates is that this particular 29-degree nodal axis shift, the entry into the new points of Sagittarius, Gemini, boy, oh boy, everybody, this is going to be a karmic journey. It's going to be a critical process for us collectively and individually to step up into maturity. That's what the 29-degree is talking about. That's what the 29 here is talking about. That's what the 29s that are creating the energetic of each of these areas of life, each of these houses, that's what it's doing. The part of fortune, our flow, is a critical degree. There's a necessity to assimilate knowledge, wisdom, experience, information, wisdom from this archetype of Libra, for example, in order to actuate a new matured iteration. That's what this is about here. So I'm going to talk about all of this, but look at karma also at 29. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. 29 karma is a culmination point. This next 18 months is going to be a culmination, and it's going to call for, individually and collectively, the assimilation of Taurian Venusian values, of Taurian Venusian orientation. This is about a maturation, a karmic process of maturation and assimilation, of learning our own sense of self-worth, self-value, to have ethical alignment here, to really have a matured relationship with possessions and things and money. Karmically, critical degree, this is where it's at. It's tied to the signature of this entrance into the nodal axis and the new growth. Because what we're looking at again with this 29-degree North Node in Gemini, this is about maturation. And again, as I stated in the first video, we have this nodal point sitting in the 29-degree point. North Node 29 Gemini, South Node 29 Capricorn. In Sagittarius. 29 Sag, 29 Gemini. It's going to be sitting there for 2 months. 2 months. Okay? So this is a big deal because it's indicating that we have work to do. There is a critical need for us each to assimilate, to mature our own thinking, how we're using the mind, how we're discerning information that we're curious about, that we're learning about, that we're hearing. How are we using our mind? How are we communicating? There's a maturation called. And simultaneously, this 29-degree Sagittarius point, there's a necessity to take wisdom and experience, our own learnings, our own processes of experience that we've had over our lifetimes, and to assimilate it into a grounded wisdom. But as most of you might know, some of you might not know, 29s, because it's considered a quote-unquote critical degree, which makes sense, right? We have a 30-degree archetypal storyline here, 30 degrees of growth, 30 degrees part and parcel to the process of the Sagittarius storyline. The 29th is at the end there. It's right before it enters into a new cycle, right? Now keep in mind, so you guys are all clear, the South Node, North Node moves clockwise. All the other planetary placements move counterclockwise. But the nodal axis moves this way. Thus, it's moved from Capricorn into Sagittarius. That's what we're looking at here, okay? So just realize that we're going backwards when we're looking at a nodal axis, which has its own interest. You know, it has its own curiosity there. It's fascinating that that's the case, but it is the case. And it's correct for how the positions of the intersection of the moon's axis intersects with the ecliptic. So it's correct, right? It's natural and it's correct. But it's fascinating when we're talking about archetypal storylines. But what we're talking about here with the South Node position at 29 in Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter, this is about our belief systems. So there's a need to mature, to come from a place of maturity when it comes to what we believe is true. To really stepping from a place or orienting our perceptions from a place of experiential wisdom. However, because it's a 29 degree, what does that mean? It means that there can be regression because there's pressure to mature a 29 point. And some people, many people, by default, resist the growth. And so what do they do at the 29 degree? They regress. And the regression of a Jupiter Sagittarius archetypal process is about projecting your truth, projecting your dogma, projecting your dogmatic assertion of truth, what you believe is the truth because of the religion that you were taught or the philosophy that you imbibed and believe. So this 29 degree means for the next 2 months that a lot of people are going to be preaching their dogma, no matter where it comes from. Okay? And it also means that it can come from a naive place of just believing whatever they're told. And they believe that that's the truth. So that's what's going to be happening. In the meantime, the 29-degree Gemini point, this critical point, again, the maturity of that 29-degree Gemini, everybody, is talking about um, coming from a place of matured, discerned mind and correct use of mind. Are you in fact leaking energy because you're worrying about this and you're gossiping about that and you're in everybody else's business except for your own? Or are you coming from a place of owning your own thinking, your own ideas, your own thoughts, honoring them and bringing them forward with grace and with wit and with humility and maturity? That's the maturity of this point that wants to come forward in the next 2 months. But the regression of this 29-degree point, it means that there can be a lot of fickle, changeable thoughts. It can be a lot of self-interested communications, a lot of superficial communications that can come forward that aren't tapping a deeper layer, a deeper wisdom set, a deeper authentic way of communicating. So authenticism here, depth and humility, wit and connectedness, a truth to the mind, a discerned mind, a mature mind, and a way of thinking, not spinning in the mind about selfish things, but actually coming from a place of more social responsibility for your collective, for the local group, for the community, the neighborhood, etc. So maturity of mind is called, but again, the 29 can bring regression, which can be all of these things that I had just stated. A little bit superficial, a little bit flaky, a little bit flitty, going from here to there to there. Curious, but not grounding the curiosity into something solid, you know? And this can also look like gossiping, the kind of energy of Gemini when it's naive, because that's another growth edge with the more regressed version of Gemini. It can be maybe a bit more naive. It can be a bit more speaking without thinking. It can be a bit more superficial and flaky, as I've stated. But all of these aspects are going to come about in some people and not in others. It depends on where your consciousness is at. So this is the major growth edge that we have here. Now I want to pull up the symbology for it. And I want to also look at some of these other items here that I'm just talking about. So let me pull this over a little bit here. And let's pull this over slightly, okay, because you can still see the axis here. So I'm going to go down to Dane Rudhyar's explanation here for the 29 to 30 Gemini, which is the North Node. This is going to be the growth edge for the next 18 months for all of us. Okay, beauties, so this is what we're looking at right here. Interesting. So we have a parade of bathing beauties before large beach crowds. The setting of social standards through personal excellence and competition. So just let that sink in for a minute before going any deeper here. Okay, so just imagine the picture here. A parade of bathing beauties before beach crowds. Okay. And then the keynote here, the point of interest here, the setting of social standards through personal excellence and competition. Okay, so let's read this. In this very American scene, we see a very ancient and basic process which can operate at several levels. Society sets certain collectively acceptable cultural standards and recompenses by prestige and fame the persons who embody them, physically or mentally. This generates emulation and the desire to bring the social images to their most perfect and concrete manifestation. The archetypal image or canon of proportion is thus incarnated for all to behold and be fascinated by. The process of exteriorization is completed. This is the last phase of the sixth scene. In the zodiac, the spring season has come to a close. It is summer solstice. They're talking about the timing of this Gemini Cancer point, right? So it is the summer solstice. Fulfillment leads to new demands upon the individual human consciousness. The show is over. Now comes the hour of decision. I'm getting chills with that one. Now comes the hour of decision. I mean, there is something with this symbology that certainly speaks to being seen, being seen, being on stage. Now, we're all living in a world where everybody is speaking, everybody's talking, everybody's taking videos, everybody's sharing stuff, okay? And there's a bit of almost this egoic need. It's almost a default pent up energetic where everybody needs to express. Everybody's writing their book. Everybody's doing this. Everybody's doing that. And there's beauty to that. And there's a lot of noise in the collective field, okay? So with that all being said, this particular symbology here speaks to kind of being seen and being on stage. It speaks to personal excellence, which definitely speaks to a maturation point of the 29 that I'm talking about here. Personal maturity of mind, maturity of thinking, maturity of communication skills. So there's this personal excellence of mind and communication. But there's also competition here, right? So this is the show. Now the show is over. Now comes the hour for decision. I got chills with that. There is something here about the need for personal excellence, the need to communicate, I would say, with a new level of integrity. Definitely the case here as well. It's like the 29-degree Sag is speaking to the fact of um, the need to embody wisdom, you know, as opposed to like the earlier iteration of the Sagittarius process. It's like optimistically, eyes wide open, having new experiences and really kind of drinking in everything the teacher says, everything the philosopher says, everything that's learned is adopted as truth. The more we go through the Sagittarius process, we understand, we learn from our own experiences what the truth is for us, for our higher mind. And that's what this is about. This maturity is about the assimilation of wisdom, not believing everything that you're told. Discernment, discernment. It's a greater level of discernment is the maturity point here. For the next 2 months, we're all in this space of needing to come from the place of personal understanding of what truth is. And the fact is, there's multiple sides to every truth. The life is not black and white. Living systems don't operate that way. It's not. And what you're going to find is a lot of the information being shared on YouTube and everywhere else, it's all about black and white. The big red flag is whenever anybody has a strict and staunch position that they don't eliminate, that they don't learn from, then it's a red flag because life is not that fixed. It's just not. And so this is the growth edge here. In the meantime, the growth edge is personal integrity of your thinking and your thoughts and your mind and your communications. It's so important, it's so vital for this process. And here there's a decision to be made. Keep in mind, we're also talking with this process as it's relating to certainly the eastern US, including Washington, D.C., and the political structures here. But this is, this narrative here of this axis is applying to governments and corporate entities and the few billionaires out there. It's applying to all of them as well as all of us, the masses. And in fact, really the masses are the big point of power shift dynamic that is called to occur now with this 18-month process. South node through here, north node through here. The uprising wants to come. And by the way, in the next 18-month cycle, that's going to be even more the case, which we'll talk about at another time. So let's go to the South Node positioning. So we're going to go to 29 to 30 Sag. Let's look what that symbol is. Okay. Here we go. Right here. Oh my gosh. See, fantastic. So this is the critical degree of the belief system, Sagittarius. The Pope blessing the faithful. The need to pay homage to traditional values upon which the invisible community of the spirit is built. Now, I'm going to remind you before I read any further, what is it, everybody, that the South Node is naturally evoking now for the next 2 months and for the next 18 months? We're talking about a release. There's a need to release. There's going to be an extreme energy that's activated, but there's a need to release it because it's a toxic pattern. There's toxicity that lives here that must be released. And so when we're talking about the Pope blessing the faithful, we're not necessarily specifically talking about the Pope, but in a way we are. This is symbology here, and it speaks to real world scenario. But also take it broader. Don't reduce it down to the Pope. Understand these as broader narratives here, okay? So again, the need to pay homage to traditional values upon which the invisible community of the spirit is built. This is specifically talking about the need to release dogmas about things that were taught to you when you were young. You've believed these things as true. Trust me when I tell you, all of us are going through, and I think it's already been happening actually, but all people are going to start to really go through major shattered illusions for the next 18 months. And I think I mentioned that in the previous video. Major shattered illusions. And for some people that are rigidly attached to their idea of truth, oh my goodness, they're going to have little panic attacks, and they're going to have all kinds of things going on because they're going to not be able to cope with anything that's not inside their construct of reality. This is when people are going to start to break, and they're going to start to take out their guns, and they're going to start to shoot up people, because if my truth isn't real, nothing's real. Okay? So that's why we need people to wakey. Wake out of your delusion. We think we know what the truth is. We don't know what the truth is. All kinds of shattered illusions, everybody. And the thing is, with this stuff being released, the Pope blessing the faithful, these traditional values, the invisible community of spirit, this is talking about religion, but it's also talking about other dogmas of truth. Big stuff going on here. Globally, and with your individual life, okay? The concrete integration of myriads of human individuals within a great religious institution with a long tradition reflects, as well as having produced century after century, an invisible spiritual community. Drink that in, everybody. This is big. The flag bearer, which is a previous symbol, has now become the Pope. Just drink that in. The flag bearer. This is a previous symbol here in Sagittarius. So the flag bearer has become the Pope. Somebody who's a nationalist, somebody who is a nativist perhaps, a flag bearer has become the Pope, okay? Who assumes the role of God's representative on earth. It is a role, but culture is based on embodying great images and deeply moving symbols in physical reality. The symbol asks of the individual, are you willing to live a transpersonal life as a symbol? This is a final and supreme statement of that section of the cycle of the year represented by Sagittarius. This concludes scene 18. A collectivity of human beings is seen having transferred their sense of spiritual value to a man who has become an incarnation of their common ideal. Keywords: personalized worship. It can be a blessing or in some cases, a curse. Everybody, let's put this down. This is huge because this really speaks so tightly to the need to grow and mature your own construct of reality, your own paradigm of truth, your worldview, to come from your own sets of learnings and experiences. What have you learned throughout your years on this earth, whether you're 25 or whether you're 65? This is for your assimilated wisdom, not to run your life from a set of beliefs, constructs that have become human made paradigms built to create a certain structure of law abiding and all kinds of other things. Huge release of that symbology. Couldn't be more perfect for the signature. Now, the other thing that I want to point to, gosh, there's a lot here. Let's look at karma. Karma. This is an asteroid named Karma, okay? Also at 29 degrees. Do you see this? 29 degrees, 53 minutes. It's in Taurus. Taurus, ruled by Venus, aligned with the second house. This is the narrative of meeting needs and creating and manifesting abundance. This is the house of value, how you love and value yourself. Karma at 29 says there's a critical need here now for the next couple months, for the next 18 months, to value yourself. To value yourself. Now, what is this 29 degree? By the way, it's conjuncting Sedna. So we have Sedna and Karma conjuncted. And what that indicates is that there's going to be issues here. And I'm going to make this as clear as I can because it's very important that you all that are open to what I'm saying here really drink this in. Like, really listen. Sedna is where we don't trust. It's where energetically we've had an experience of betrayal and actually being killed. Okay, but that's the deeper narrative here. Sedna shows where we experience betrayal and where we now don't have trust. So, where is it that you're not having trust? Your own sense of self-worth. Where is it that you don't trust that you can meet your own basic essential needs? Where is it that you don't trust that you're going to have the money to create the abundance that you want in this life? But yet, it's the karma. You're needing to go through this process of lack. There's a lot of Americans out of work right now. There's a lot of fear that can get created with Sedna here. Okay? And there's a lot of ambiguity because we have Uranus in the second house creating all kinds of shift and change, chaotic process when it comes to our livelihoods and when it comes to our shelter and our food and our possessions and our money and our bank accounts and all this stuff. And certainly where we fit in all of this, which, by the way, trust me, you all fit. You all have a distinct blueprint. You all have a distinct encoding. You all have a distinct story. My link to my services is below. It's important that you all, I've said this now for the last few years, but it really is because we're in it now, because we're now in the cycle of great change. The time for alignment is now and in the upcoming. So in the next 3 years, during this process of the North Node moving through this space, and actually this space as well. So 3 years, the next 4.5, 5 years, which, by the way, correlates with Pluto's process continuing through the end portion of Capricorn. More destruction within the social structures and the civilization structures, the political structures globally. So over the next 5 years, this is happening. And over the next 5 years, Uranus will continue its process through Taurus. There's correlation here, okay? This is going to come up to trine with Pluto that's happening here. This is correct process of changing the guards. The whole political and social structure foundations are already crumbling. They have been since 2008, which is when Pluto entered Capricorn. But it's continuing for the next 5 years. This is going to be there for the next 5 years. And what else do we have happening for the next 5 years? North Node through Gemini, then through Taurus, then through Aries. This is a time for the individual to rise. And it doesn't mean rise out of a place of wounding. It's your responsibility to rise out of a place of self-knowing, self-value. That's what the karma is, everybody, for the next 18 months. You're not necessarily trusting who you are, why you're here, and if you can even manifest what it is that you see and want for yourself. But that's the karmic process, period. Couldn't be more perfect, could not be more on point. And what do we have happening? Well, there's a quincunx here. So there's a challenging relationship between this karmic need to start to trust yourself, start to trust that you're powerful enough to manifest what you need and what you desire in this world. And it's quincunxing compassion and, importantly, the part of fortune. The exact quincunx between karma and the part of fortune says a lot, because here there's this difficult relationship between the need to trust and some sort of difficulty with flow. So let me explain. When we're talking about the part of fortune, we're talking about where natural energy is flowing. It also includes money, by the way. It includes, because money is energy, the natural flow of things, including money. And so when we're looking at a 29-degree part of fortune, what are we looking at? We're looking at a critical need to mature and assimilate the growth of this archetype in order to let it flow, especially because there's this difficult natural relationship between the distrust issue. Okay? And by the way, a lot of people, because Sedna is conjunct karma, a lot of people are not going to choose to flow because they're so bound in victim energy here. I can't do it, and it's just karma, and I'm disempowered over here. When that's not really what it is at all. It can be the response mechanism, but that's not what this is about. This Sedna karma can bring out the victim. I'm a victim here. This is too much pressure for me. I don't have what it takes to manifest my reality over here. My aligned reality, according to my own distinct blueprint. What you want, so for Mary out there listening, or for Karen out there listening, or for John out there listening, or James or Kevin, or, whoever's listening, this is a time for alignment. That's why I said that really it is a time for knowing your own blueprint. Because what you want is different than everybody else. It's different than a lot of people. You're going to have groups that you resonate with and many groups that you're not. And by the way, there's going to be lots of dissolution. Lots of people are going to be separating away from teachers, from dogmas, and from people that have been influencing factors for them. Over the next 18 months, a lot of people are going to be separating from people, like groups that had similar ideas. Lots of separation, lots of fragmenting. More people kind of connecting locally, not so much connecting out there to people they don't know, connecting into people they do know. But back over here, so if the person listening to me is willing to own the karma of this moment, the karma on the Sedna says that this is correct. What is happening over this next process now and over the next 18 months is accurate. It is pushing the person karmically and at a critical point of needing to mature. Trust in your own self-worth and value, trust that you can manifest. And if you don't do that, there's going to be issue here with the flow point. The flow point is in Libra, 29 degrees Libra, ruled by Venus. So the thing is, Taurus is ruled by Venus and Libra is ruled by Venus. Venus quincunxing Venus. This is value and money, quincunxing value and money. How do you love yourself and what are you worth? How do you love yourself and what are you worth? There's a difficult relationship here, and it's requiring growth and movement. And indeed, what is it requiring? Compassion. So you're going to have compassion, everybody, for the darkness, for the shadow, for the wounds, for the past. The flow is to go deep. The flow is to have compassion for the scorpionic, plutonic, eighth house components of your psyche. To not shame them, to not segment them, to not partition them, to not put them in the closet, to not deny them, to not look at them. This is a time over the next 18 months to get real close and comfortable, to allow and to find the beauty and the function of what all the shadow dark stuff, the traumas, the deaths, the losses, the betrayals, the woundings, the abuses, all of the stuff that's part of your story. Stop denying it. The compassion for you, the wholeness of you, the darkness of you. That's the flow. It could not be any clearer. When you do that, then what do we have here? We have a yod formation here. This 29-degree compassion point, quincunxing Sedna karma, is also quincunxing for those on the eastern coast, including Washington, D.C., and our government here, the ascendant. The ascendant at 29 degrees Pisces is ruled by Neptune. The maturity is discernment of spiritual essential understandings. It's about a maturity and an assimilation of intuitive knowing about the immaterial realm of this life. We have material reality and we have immaterial reality. And the 29 degree, because it can regress, it means that there can be radical delusion here that can come up. Radical self-delusion, radical confusion, radical conflation. It's like people can just not be in their discerned mind. I have to say, discernment is definitely called with the 29-degree Pisces Neptune ascendant for the eastern U.S., as well as discernment calling simply because of the 29-degree growth edge for Gemini Mercury. So discernment is called here. Discernment is called here. Discernment is called here, period. And of course, we have the T-square bringing it all home, again, for the eastern U.S. But I have to tell you, even for those of you not in Eastern time zone, this ascendant point moves a little here and a little here. It's not that off. So there's still generally the T-square energetic that's activated, which is speaking to the need to perceive clearly, differently, more maturely. That's what the ascendant is, your perspective and approach to life. Okay? So the point is that the yod here is very fascinating and it's perfect. It's beautiful. The flow. Let's talk a little bit about the flow. Definitely having compassion for your darker aspects to re-holing your psyche is part and parcel to this journey of the next 18 months. It's going to aid in your perception of reality and your approach to life in a more spiritually integrated way. And it's connected here to trusting your own value and your own ability to manifest your aligned ideal reality. But if we talk a little bit more about this part of fortune at 29 degrees Libra ruled by Venus, this has to do with relationships, and it has to do with being loved or feeling loved, feeling valued and appreciated in relationships. This is a critical degree point. It means that it's going to be a growth edge. And there's a need to mature how we feel the moon, also in the 7th house in Libra. So we have this critical need to have proper compassion for the psychic depths of the other, the psychic depths of ourself, and as we do that within, it creates the dynamic without. This is really pretty powerful here. 29-degree part of fortune, the need to flow with other, the need to have compassion with other, the need to have compassion for the psyche of other. This is part of this yod, and the yod, or a finger of God, is really showing about kind of a necessary process. It's a process that we will go through. We will go through it. How people will respond, that's their free will choice. They can either go with the proper flow of evolutionary process, or they'll deny it and they'll resist it. And then they'll be in victimhood and they'll be in suffering. And so they create that reality, and that's the free will choice. The free will choice is not the story. The free will choice is how one responds to the story. Yes? Okay, everybody, gosh, I mean, I still feel like there's so much more to talk about, but I'm going to leave it there because I do feel like bringing up the additional asteroids and talking about the symbology is just, it brings a whole nother layer to the first video that I put out. I send you much love. For those interested in my work, you can see my links below. For those interested in learning about your blueprint, you can see my services below. I send you much love, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.